complaints of shortness of breath grade 4 since 2 days that has progressed from grade 3 to 4 within 10 days, sir. And it is not associated with cough or fever. It is associated with orthopnea and PLD, which is increased progressively in terms of number of episodes for the past 3 months. There's also decreased urine output for the past 1 week, for which she was treated outside and she did not come with her complaint anymore. History of similar complaints 5 years back. 5 years back, she was an agricultural worker by occupation. Then she suddenly developed fever with the shortness of breath grade 2, for which she went to the local doctor there and she was treated for 1 week. There's no documentation as such. And after that, her dyspnea progressively increased over time in the period of 5 years from grade 2 to 3. And she left her occupation and she became a homemaker in these 5 years. Before that, the only history that she revealed regarding the cause for SOP was she cooks using the chula for the past 10 years. And there's no exposure to pollen or any much of flowering plants as such in her agricultural work. And
so in a way you started dissecting your history and analyzing it even before you presented the entire history. In terms of negative history, I think that's what we often say. But why are you bringing in etiologies first? Wouldn't it be nice to bring in morphologic diagnosis first? Like when we analyze this, you start with anatomy. Which anatomical organs are involved? What is the pathology? And then think of etiology. That's the last thing. Of course, that is the root cause, but where exactly is the current problem? So do you think it's in the lungs? Because you only mentioned about the lungs.
Yes, I'm coming to the... She had PND also, sir.
Okay, so tell us the history in Pluto.
Yes.
You started by saying that she had a certain...
5 years back, she had a complaint of shortness of breath grade 2, sir.
So she had a certain occupation.
Yes, sir. She had an occupation.
What?
She was an agricultural laborer 5 years back, sir.
I mean, it's a very broad term, agricultural laborer.
Yes, rice fields, sir. She used to work the paddy fields. She used to plant the paddy fields.
So that would not be always planting paddy.
Yes, she used to carry during harvest and all of that she would carry, but not much
so her workload would be different at different times, depending on the season and the harvest. So it was a variable workload.
Yes.
And you are saying that at a certain point of time, it was not a sudden onset. Very gradually she noticed that she was not able to do certain
the regular work
what
she was doing, she was not able to do that 5 years back.
So that is called grade 2 if you are not able to do regular work.
Her routine work.
Routine work, if you are not able to do, you are calling it grade 2 dyspnea. Yeah, it's better to tell us what exactly is happening rather than putting a grade there. Because most of us may not know what is grade 2 dyspnea.
So regular accustomed work she was
so what was her regular work? Maybe I will have grade 2 dyspnea if I have to do it regularly.
Apart from her household chores, she also used to do agricultural work, walk for a distance.
She had to walk to the place of work and then what kind of work was she doing?
Depending on the season, sir. Either mostly plantation and then harvest. Whenever it was harvest season, she would carry those harvested crops. That's what.
And planting is like she had to bend down and put the seed into that.
Carrying it, she didn't do much of it, sir. It was only occasional. So she didn't do much of lifting.
When did she actually feel that she was short of breath?
She noticed it 5 years back. She didn't notice the exact point of things, sir. Only when she had fever and cough. She mentioned she had fever and cough for a duration of 3 to 5 days. 5 years back. So that time she mentioned it to the physician that she also had shortness of breath when she was doing her accustomed work, and they have advised that she should just sit at home instead of...
So she remembers that mentioning to the physician, but she doesn't
remember the onset of it.
Before that.
So after that, acutely she came with complaints of bilateral...
So she was like that, having shortness of breath doing routine work, because of which she could not work, as you said.
So that is why she stopped working and she's only doing household chores. But for the past 3 months, her orthopnea and PLEs have also significantly increased in the number of episodes per week.
So from just having certain shortness of breath during regular activity, or
she's decreased her activity.
She decreased her activity, but in spite of that, her problems increase.
Yes, sir. It's getting better.
Shortness of breath increase.
Yes, sir.
So, and it increased to a point that she was having it at night and she
Yes.
was unable to sleep, she was having
Yes.
shortness of breath. And suddenly she was woken at night and she had
Yes.
to have this problem. Okay. So, how frequent are those episodes? Was it happening like in the afternoon she could not take a nap because of that?
The unable to lie down completely has happened only for the past 10 days.
10 days.
Before that, in the night time, she would wake up wanting to have a breath of fresh air. And previously, it was around 1 to 2 episodes per week, sir. But then every day, every night, she started waking up from that time. And then her sleep pattern has also altered.
Previously, 1 to 2 episodes per week.
Yes.
And what were those episodes? And
Like she would wake up in the night, sir, feeling dyspneic. So then she told
so
that
how long has she been having these episodes?
for 3 months, sir.
3 months.
3 months.
So whatever has happened is 3 months.
3 months.
Before that, she was like she could not do routine work.
No,
That's it.
she stopped doing her agricultural work, sir.
Ah.
But routine work she was able to carry on. By the time she was living at her son's place, so there was not much of work that she needed to do. Her daily chores she was doing without any problems. So for 3 months, there was only
She's not able to do that.
No, sir. 3 months, there was a decrease in the work she was doing, sir. And then for the past 10 days, she's not able to even lie down without being dyspneic. So her sleep pattern was also altered for the past 10 days. And then when she presented, she also came with complaints of bilateral pedal edema up to ankles with decreased urine output. And 3 days back itself, before she presented to us, she went out, she took treatment outside from a local doctor. And she told that that medication that they gave solved the problem of decreased urine output as such, but pedal edema did not reduce.
So this is all in the history.
Yes, sir. And negative history, I mean, she did not have any low-grade fever or joint pains, and she also had a complaint of decreased appetite for the past 5 years, and that made her have a mild weight loss, about 1 to 2 kilos. Or the respiratory system.
If it is cardiac, how does it become cardiac? I mean, why do cardiac people have shortness of breath? Doesn't it have anything to do with the respiratory system at all? Because when you say shortness of breath, it means the lungs are having a problem and the bronchus is having a problem. So, how does it happen in cardiac? Why do we have shortness of breath?
So basically, when the heart has dysfunctioning, it will affect the pulmonary vasculature. Because of that.
Because of why? I mean, why does the pulmonary vasculature become effective if the heart is dysfunctioning? Very good.
In case of left ventricular failure, there will be increased pulmonary vascular resistance
Because of?
because of the backflow.
Okay, not pulmonary vascular resistance, because of increased pulmonary artery pressures. So why? Yeah, because of backflow. Because the left ventricular endoscopic pressure is rising, LA pressure is rising, the same pressure will be transmitted to the pulmonary arteries. So the capillaries will be all high pressure, and the alveoli will not open so easily. They will meet resistance. And that will cause that feeling of dyspnea, which she was feeling 5 years back. She was suddenly, that was what was happening. So maybe it was early pulmonary arterial hypertension. But could it have been a bronchial disease also? Can you also have the shortness of breath due to bronchial disease? If it is so, if it was a respiratory purely problem, then what kind of history you would have expected, which doesn't appear to be here? If it was a bronchial.
In the history, she's complaining of PND, so it goes
Okay, that
goes in
is
the favor of.
all that is in the favor of the heart will come to later. What is not in favor of heart, whether it is there or not there, at least they mentioned that. Lung problems. So what are the endobronchial symptoms a person can have?
Productive.
Yes. Productive cough. She didn't have any cough. Okay, what else? Fever is not a bronchial symptom. Huh?
She has short.
Wheezing. Yes, wheezing. So shortness of breath is, of course, there wheezing and cough. So these are important, and of course you can have hemoptysis and other things. But wheezing would suggest again a bronchial problem. So she didn't have these two important things. So call it a bronchial problem alone. On the other hand, for cardiac thing, it was a progressive thing. It could still be a lung problem. It could be interstitial lung disease for all you know. without any bronchial involvement. What else would have given more weightage to heart problem, which she has not mentioned, but I'm sure it was there. She didn't take the history. So you should ask that history. Huh? We have discussed this before in the previous class.
Chest pain, palpitation.
Yeah, just in palpitation. She has not talked about palpitation. Okay, she is coming to that. So come to that and let's come to palpitation.
But they've increased for the past 1 week. That's not associated with any loss of consciousness or weakness, and no sweating or any of that. So just when she slept, she couldn't differentiate between dyspneic episode and palpitations. At that time, she said she could.
So remember which question who is answering. So how do you say this palpitation is what kind of a cardiac problem? The one which she is describing. What kind of a cardiac problem
Hold
is
it
that
no
palpitation? What is the nature of the palpitation to make you decide what cardiac problem is this? Palpitation means she may be having a cardiac problem, as she said. So there are two kinds of palpitation. One is intermittent, as she said, paroxysmal, and the other is exertional, pounding kind of palpitation, progressive exertional palpitations. So hers is paroxysmal. So what kind of
After that, for the past 10 days, it's progressive.
progressive? So she's also having progressive palpitation and pounding palpitation. So what does that suggest to you? These two things. Yeah, heart failure. What? Yeah, I mean, what are you talking about? Intermittent palpitation or progressive palpitation? Yeah. So what will happen? Yeah, as he was saying, Dr. Aditya, volume overload state. In regurgitant lesions, volume overload state, whatever cause of overload, the patient will have pounding palpitations because of that, exertional palpitation. Whereas intermittent paroxysmal palpitations are seen in, first branch. Arrhythmia. Very good. Yeah. So what would be a arrhythmia? Very common arrhythmia, which is, yes, that's one of the very commonest arrhythmia. So maybe we are thinking it could be an arrhythmia to start with. Overload. That is what this thing is. The history is telling us. So any other history that we need to analyze. So how will we summarize the case? Very good, very good. Which part of the heart? Right or left ventricle? Left ventricle, yes. No symptoms at least of the right ventricle right now. Okay. Then, been a chronic thing. So why does she have this left ventricular failure? What are the known causes of left ventricular failure? What is the commonest cause of left ventricular failure? I mean, in terms of anatomy, pathology in the heart. Coronary artery disease is one. Valvular heart disease is another.
Hypertension.
Hypertension, yes. Cardiomyopathy, yes. So which one of these could it be? By the history, is it possible to figure out? Causes, let's say etiologically, whether it's a rheumatic fever. What kind of history do you ask for in rheumatic fever? Know whether she was having
Joint pain.
Fever with joint pain.
fever and
pain,
joint pain in the past. Alright. Whether she was diagnosed as rheumatic fever in the last 5 years. How do you know that? What kind of treatment would have been given as prophylaxis? Which the patient will be able to tell you. Penicillin injection, how is it given? Okay, how are penicillin injections given? I mean, every 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 to 4 weeks it can be, because what do you give as prophylaxis? Okay, who will tell? What kind of penicillin?
Penicillin G.
Yeah, so how is it different from penicillin V? Or phenoxymethyl penicillin? Different from benzoyl penicillin. Penicillin week be taken once in 4 weeks. So why is this taken once in 4 weeks? Yes, it's got a long half-life. 21 days, and that's why once in 3 weeks. So once you give, it is there for 21 days. So you need not bother. So that is the advantage of it. Over taking daily tablets. You can take daily tablets also, or you can do it. So what is the purpose behind doing this, giving rheumatic prophylaxis? Yes, who can prevent heart disease? No, how? I mean, how is penicillin going to prevent that? Okay, but what is the role of penicillin here? How is it going to prevent from rheumatic fever to heart disease? I said that the patient already has valvulitis, mitral regurgitation, and probably she will go into mitral stenosis. So how is the prophylaxis going to help? Okay, anyone here? To kill the bacteria, isn't it? If the bacteria comes, how will it come? What bacteria are we trying to kill? Group A streptococcus, isn't it? How will it come? We know that it comes through pharyngitis, maybe skin also, but yeah, basically pharyngitis. So you are giving so that even if the bacteria comes, it will die, isn't it? So you are giving it lifelong or for 10 years, so that if it comes, what may happen? The same thing can happen again. One acute episode of rheumatic fever can happen second time. See, yesterday also we discussed, some of you are not here, about secondary prevention of heart attacks, brain attacks, basically cerebrovascular disease, cardiovascular disease. Secondary prevention. What is the role of statin? That was presented extensively. And what is the role of aspirin has also been discussed earlier. So similarly, this is also for secondary prevention of another attack of rheumatic fever. Once you have had a rheumatic fever. So is there a role of primary prevention? Should all of you be taking penicillin injections to prevent your first attack of rheumatic fever? If yes, why? It happens to just 1 to 3% of people. So even if you have it, there's very less chance that you will get rheumatic fever. So it's very difficult to say who is going to have it. But yes, once you have it, if you have it the second time, then your heart will suffer more. Already it is scarred. You will have another attack, another valvulitis. You can have a severe problem. So that was the rationale and the logic for which people started giving everybody rheumatic prophylaxis. But really, what is the efficacy of it? I'm not sure if there is any trial which has been done for that. So it is basically based on logic. So for this lady, no diagnosis of rheumatic fever was made, obviously, because she has not been put on rheumatic prophylaxis. So what is her diagnosis then?